Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 7 of the Future Ready Librarians podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and serve as the Future Ready Librarians Leader. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I am honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. Today, as we kick off Season 7, I am so excited to welcome my friend Tricia to the podcast. And this is something that I have always admired Tricia's work. And we were just talking before we started that my background is in art education and how I think that, we're all so creative and we love to hear like these stories of people and do things in our libraries and our classroom that bring creativity. But Tricia is one that just by watching what she puts out there and the inspiration I think that she gives others is always just so inspiring and wonderful. And so to kick it off with her today is just a real honor. And I want to start by having Tricia just introduce herself and tell us a little bit about your background too.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me on this show. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Tricia Fuglestad. I'm a K-5 art teacher. I've been doing that for 30 years in a suburb of Chicago. And I recently moved into a different realm where I'm working on creating children's books. And so I just released Peter-O-Meter, which is a augmented reality, social emotional learning book that I'm super excited about. And if you had seen me on Twitter or any social media, that's all I've been sharing for about 9 months. So I'm excited to be here and talk about that maybe.
I know. And I thought it would be so neat to have you on because we're seeing all these great things that you're sharing. And I actually got Peter-O-Meter myself, and I couldn't wait to see it. And this is a book that one thing I love is bringing it into our libraries and classrooms or our art rooms or even our homes, that the things that kids can do and teachers and librarians can do with this book is so special. And so just to start out, like thinking about the origin of the story, I think is one thing that is so cool too. And so tell us about how this idea came about.
Okay, this is fun for me. Somewhere around 2011, iPads started to be available for my students. And I started to think about how to incorporate dynamic or digital media into what we're already doing in my elementary classroom. So we would make art and then we'd figure out a digital extension of our art project. And what I was learning is that it was creating a much richer, more engaging lesson for my students, and it was adding more to the curriculum. So I started really getting excited about this and planning that we would make art and then we would make art move. And what was becoming, or what became of this, is transdigital art that had a physical component and a digital component. And then I was stuck because I didn't know how to showcase this. I had an online portfolio for my students using Artsonia. So we would upload our still images and then we could upload a digital version that maybe moved, an animated version. But it felt very disconnected. And so when augmented reality became something that consumers could play with. First it was HP Reveal, or Erasma it was called, and then it turned into HP Reveal, and then some other products came out. I started seeing that my students could connect their physical art and the digital version that they created together and showcase it through augmented reality. So that started getting me thinking, okay, so if we can do this in our art, what else can we do it with? And I love to pull in books, children's books, as inspiration for some of the lessons that we do in my elementary art room. So I was pulling in books, and then I thought, well, let me show them how I can make this book come to life on the cover by animating the cover and then setting up augmented reality and just wowing them. And then, so every time like we were going to do a lesson like the snowman perhaps, and they were going to fly with their snowman, and they were going to make a snowman, and then they were going to fly with their snowman, as inspired by Raymond Briggs' book. I animated the cover of the book, and then I showed them through augmented reality it coming to life. And they're like, I want to do this. How do I do this? So then I realized I need to start designing these lessons. I need to start figuring out what more we can do with this, because this is the kind of engagement that they're craving. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I could animate the cover of a book, why can't I just make a book that is all about, has augmented reality in it? And so I could tell the story. If I love to use books to teach, why don't I make a book that teachers could teach from and make it come to life and create incredible engagement for kids? So that's the origin story.
So that is how the idea for Peter O-Meter started, which I love. And so a lot of times people have these great book ideas, and then they're like, okay, so where do I go with this idea? And I know that you worked with teacher goals, which is something that just by talking to, we talked about how they do professional books, and now your great picture book. And tell us a little bit about that too.
So I helped run the Green Screen Summit last summer, so a summer ago, and with Erica Sandstrom. And during that time, I was connecting with different vendors like Quiver Vision. We interviewed them. We learned about what they do and how they create augmented reality from coloring sheets. And one of our presenters, Amanda Fox, I was working on putting her bio into the website, and her bio was saying that she creates augmented reality children's books using Quiver Vision. And I'm like, hold it, this is a thing. This is what I want. Hold it, how? And so after the whole dust settled of the Green Screen Summit, I connected with her and I said, is this a thing? Do people really make augmented reality children's books? And she's like, well, it's going to be a thing. I'm going to make it happen. And I started with Markertown. So she sent me Markertown and I saw how it worked. She had this integration of augmented reality and coloring sheets with Quiver Vision, and it was all embedded into the story. And I was like, hold it, maybe my dream could happen. Can I do a book pitch? Which I came to them through a virtual meeting, and my robots are in the background on the wall behind me. And I'm telling them about a story that I had dreamed of years ago called the Snow Flurry Fairy. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. But tell us about those robots on the wall. And so I'm like, okay, those are my emotional robots that I did when I was, feeling a lot of feelings. And I wanted to share all my feelings as robots. So I have 6 robots and they each express different emotions. And then I set them up with augmented reality and they express their emotions. And I said, I bet there's a story there. Can you come back in a couple of weeks and share that story with us? So that's how Peter Meter was. Well, so I did that. I I came up with the story, put it together, and they're going to let me do the Snow Flurry Fairy, but they wanted me to try Peter and Meter first. So I have a contract for that. So yes, they're based on the emotional robots from my wall.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that they saw the robots on the wall. Like that's such a neat way for them, because the book is just so special. And so I'm glad that you made that connection, because now I see them and I love that. I think that's so neat. And I think for people who especially haven't seen Peter O-Meter yet, just tell us a little bit more about what makes Peter O-Meter different.
So Peter O-Meter is a robot that has a newly upgraded emotion panel that needs calibrating. So he lives in a robot world, and during his day and different, he experiences different things, and it generates a response in his robot body. And that's when he realizes he needs to press a button. So he breaks the fourth wall and he asks the reader, "Hi, reader, it's Peter. I need your advice. Please, tell me which button to press on my emotion device." And so that's when the reader needs to stop and take a look at the clues in the illustrations, in the stories, and try to empathize with what he's going through to figure out what advice you want to send him. In the book could be read just as a normal book, but you could also read it using the Quiver app. And when you use the Quiver app on those pages where they ask, what button should I press, you can pull up Peter and you can actually send his advice digitally to him, and then find out how it worked out on the next page. But there's even more to this. Like Peter O-Meter is fully augmented reality. So I kind of went overboard. I think that's kind of my personality. I go a little overboard on things. And so I wanted this book to be as amazing as possible. And I wanted to kind of make it like a treasure hunt of augmented reality. You don't have to read it with the Quiver app, but if you do, it's not going to disappoint you.
Oh, I love that. Now people can't wait to get it and everything. Another thing that I absolutely love is like all of the things too that we can do, as librarians or as art teachers, whatever we might be, thinking about tying in not only like the SEL or even like STEAM components of it, but I can see so many other things, like even just inspiring kids, like your story about, writing and dreaming about becoming, an artist or an author, like so many different things. But how have you been able to support like teachers in bringing this to their library or their classroom?
So I was trying to be very intentional when I wrote it to seamlessly integrate STEAM components in social emotional learning. I didn't want to have an add-on effect. I wanted it to be really built in. And I wanted to create a parallel universe in Peter O-Meter where we could talk about emotion without it, with like a little distance if we needed to. So when Peter flips his lid, there's an idiom there and it connects to humans. But for Peter, he actually has a mechanism where when he is filled with emotion, steam might come out and his lid might flip. And it's something to actually consider and talk about. And so the language of being a robot and with emotions, I think, is a really interesting connection. There's also science connections, like when robots play, they play a game called Circuit Maker where they actually close a circuit and then something fun happens. then you can introduce circuits to your students after seeing that piece in the book. There's the technology pieces of augmented reality and the fact that everything is animated. One thing that I think is really interesting about this story is that it is designed after retrofuturism, a movement in art that was part of like the 1950s, 60s era, where, like, if you think about the Jetsons or Lost in Space, they were dreaming, even Star Trek, they were dreaming about a future while they were living, like for us, they look like they're in the past, right? So there's elements in this story that are retro and futuristic at the same time. And I was thinking about this just last night about, and I don't know why I didn't put this together before, but the way it's actually animated is very retro. I did not the 3D animation part that Quiver Vision did, but my animations are very retro. They are flip book animations. They are like what Disney would have done in the 40s. And I did an old-fashioned kind of animation, and then it comes to life with a very futuristic augmented reality tool. So even the animation is retro-futuristic. So, but there's connections all across the board. There's tons of art in there. There's engineering. Can I just say about the engineering? There's like a design challenge. Yeah. I forgot to mention, there's like a huge activity packet that goes with this book, and that activity packet is sitting on the Teacher Goals page for free. Anybody can download it, and you can access the augmented reality in the packet right away, and all the other lessons that I put in there. But there's an engineering component in there that I'm excited about because it talks about universal design, basically, because robots, some of them are on wheels. And so you can't have staircases necessarily. And so if you look closely through those eyes at the illustrations, you'll see that it's a fully accessible environment for robots. And it's lavish. I was also thinking about how we don't, I feel like I'm talking too much, but when I was thinking about designing this classroom that Peter and Meter would be in, or his home, I began in a box. I was just really kind of stuck, like, hold it. When I see classrooms, I see low ceilings, very small windows, and cinder block walls, and a mismatch of furniture, and the only color is what teachers stick on the wall and cut out of construction paper. And I was depressed when I started thinking about classroom spaces and thinking, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pretend, in Peter's world, that they lavish resources on their robots because that's the way it should have been in the first place, right? And so we're going to have high ceilings. We're going to have big windows. We're going to have tables that are amazing and matching, and lots of equipment and gadgets built in. And same with all the living spaces and all the other environments that might have been shown, like the accessible recess equipment. I just think that I went through a transformation thinking about what would be ideal and why not live it.
I'm so glad you said that, though, because now, when we look at the book, like, that's so neat. It has so many different like stories that it tells to the reader, and you've thought about every little thing within the book. I'm so glad that you wrote it and illustrated it and brought all of these great tools together, because I think that was what makes your story even more special.
Thank you. I feel like it is definitely my baby that it actually took 9 months to make. So, but I've been living this book for so long and dreaming and stretching and growing. Oh my gosh, it is like a baby.
It is.
And now it's time to let it be born into the world and hope it takes on its own personality and makes a difference.
It's going to be such an inspiration for so many people. And I know that before we started, Tricia and I were saying, we were talking about just sharing books and also like connecting with kids. And I asked her if she would do a virtual visit with us. And that's something that she was really excited about. And so I want you to tell people about your idea and how they can connect with you too, if they are interested in these fun animated read alouds and draw alongs. I think that sounds like so much fun.
Right. So I'm an elementary art teacher, and I would love to pull out the lessons from this story with kids and connect with them virtually. So I have a draw along that I've already practiced. I did a live stream a couple weeks ago where I took the viewers step by step through how to draw Peter Meter and make him look three-dimensional. And then I was going to create, and I'm still working on it, a fully animated read aloud. So the only way that you would have access to a fully animated read aloud would be because I own all the files, so once I put it all together, I think it'll be a pretty amazing way to engage in the story. So I definitely want to connect with kids this way. And also, there's augmented reality. What I picture is there's a coloring sheet in the book, and it's in the activity packet as well. And the coloring sheet is the signature thing that Quiver Vision does. So they created a 3D model of Peter Meter that is fully interactive. So when you press on one of his 6 buttons on his panel, he changes his expression on his face to match the emotion. And then there's music to match and an animation that matches, that plays in his panel. And you could also learn about it, hear my voice explain the name of that button. So every button has a name, and it's based on those original emotional robots on my wall. And so that experience can be had right now, today. You can download that sheet. It's in the activity packet. You can scan it for free with the Quiver Vision app, and you can interact with Peter and learn about emotions. So I would love to share that and see that in action with students during a virtual author tour.
Well, and we'll make sure to put your information in the podcast notes, but tell people where they also could find you online so they can connect with you and reach out.
Sure. My last name is Fuglestad, so everything is Fugle something. I'm Fuglefun, FUGLEFUN.com is my website. And then I'm Tricia Fuglestad on Twitter and Fuglefun on Instagram. And those are the easiest places to find me.
And we'll make sure that that is all included too in the notes, because I want people to be able to connect with you and find all of the things for your great book, Peter Meter. I'm so excited for you, friend.
Thanks so much for this. I'm so excited too.
Thank you, Tricia, for being on the show today. And I know that all of our listeners will be excited to find Peter Meter and the great activities that you've created, and also that Quiver Vision have created too. So thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of season 7 of the Future Ready Librarian podcast. As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future-ready librarian. If I can support you in any way, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram at Shannon M. Miller, or to my email at shannonmcclintockmiller@gmail.com. I am always happy to help. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.